Our next speaker, Michele Heinz. Okay, I'm just going to read from this. It's a prepared speech, but I think just for the sake of efficiency, I'd like to get down to the nitty-gritty and give her the most opportunity to speak. Our first speaker, Michele Heinz, is an exceptional active citizen and a real modern-day leader. She's an accredited trainer and coach who holds various qualifications, including expert consciousness coaching, ICF professional certification, as well as being a Science of Happiness at Work licensed practitioner. Clearly, grass doesn't grow under Michele's feet, and just this week she's launched a very exciting and innovative project that will enable schools to implement life coaching and personal development principles as part of their curriculum. So this is a pilot project that Michele is spearheading, and I'll personally be keeping an eye on the progress of that. So in service of her passion, she coaches individuals and teams to be extraordinary. She currently facilitates the Energy and Vitality workshops. I think they are 2-day workshops, 1-day workshops, okay. And she's going to bring those learnings into this platform. So you'll have practical tools and scenarios that you can actually relate to. Her dynamic and inspiring coaching style is fueled by her passion for people, and she's also standing for maximizing human potential, so hoping you can tell us a little bit more about that as well. Here to impart some of her expertise and deliver tools for achieving the state of absolute energy and vitality, Michele Heinz.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for the introduction. I think you've really captured everything that is important to know about me in terms of qualification and experience. I think what I'd like to reiterate is, and what's important, is what I'm most passionate about. And that is people and performance development with the intention of supporting us in being able to tap into our maximum potential. So everything that I live and breathe, and all the extra courses and the studying and every engagement I use is another opportunity to look at more innovative, more creative ways of being able to grow this amazing being that we are. So when we talk about energy and vitality, for most of us, the first thing that comes to mind when we think of energy and vitality, it's around, are you getting enough rest? Are you getting enough exercise? Are you eating healthy enough in order to ensure that you've got the energy and vitality or the aliveness that you need to get through your day and live an extraordinary life? So it is all of that, as well as today I'm going to give you a completely different perspective on how we can get energized and how we can tap into that innate aliveness within ourselves by working a little bit in consciousness. In other words, working a little bit with our minds, working with how we relate and how we react and respond to the different circumstances of life. So the whole philosophy behind my business, which is called Energy and Vitality, which comes from a sort of a coaching, facilitation, and so slant, my training as a consciousness coach, comes from the philosophy or the viewpoint that every single one of us has access to 100% energy and vitality every single day. However, most of us don't experience that. So where does it go? So what stands between us and being able to step into that birthright of feeling fully alive and fully energized anytime, anywhere? So it's a big subject. As Samantha mentioned, I run full-day workshops. There's sort of basically 5 sort of key titles in those workshops. I'm not going to go through them in big detail, but I'll just mention them. So one of them is mood management. So are you able to effectively manage the energy that sits in your moods and emotions? Emotions can stand for energy and motion. Are we tapping into that? Are we using that? Do we even know that that's a possibility? The second one is time mastery. Now you'll notice I use the title mastery instead of management. And in the time mastery, we look at what are the relationships that we have to time. In other words, what are the stories, the conversations that we have about time that stop us from simply being able to do effective time management. So that workshop is all about looking at how do we create the conditions in our consciousness that allow our time management tools to actually work. Then we've got the communication module, which is called Managing by Agreement. So there we look at how much energy and vitality is lost in ineffective communication. And when we're not managing to express ourselves in such a way that the other person gets us the first time, the wasted time and effort and the conflict that sometimes comes at the end of that. So it's around learning a different perspective, new tools of how to communicate effectively in such a way that you and the other are left feeling empowered. Can you feel the energy that becomes available in that sort of kind of connection? Then the fourth module is the relationship module. We call it people, politics, and gossip. So this is the tough workshop. It's about really looking at sometimes the ugly side of our human nature, and that is our innate drivenness to create separation. So I is separate from you. And as soon as we create that separateness, right word, that separation is the word I'm looking for, then it automatically we create disconnection between ourselves and the other. And when we create that chasm and that distance gets further and further through whatever circumstances and interactions that we have, we eventually get to the place where we get to the most painful place a human being can be, and that is feeling isolated and alone. And we know from some really nasty studies is that as human beings, in order for us to survive physically, we need to feel connected. We need to feel that we belong, that we're part of some kind of community, and that I exist in relationship to you. So when we get to the self-created space of isolation, we panic, and we then get driven into an unconscious act of revenge and punishment. Because I now want you to feel as miserable as me, because then at least I can feel we're together. So as long as we are both feeling the same amount of pain, there's a sense of connection again. But can you see it's a false sense of connection? So there, what we want to look at is once we've seen this part of human nature and we're all depressed enough, then we look at what is the awareness, what are the tools, what are the skills that we need to learn in order to consistently create connection. So when we find us going down that path into separation and isolation and pain, what can we then start shifting? And then very quickly, the last sort of theme workshop, it's actually 5 workshops throughout the year. So it's designed as a coaching process. And that is the Complete Create series. And as mentioned earlier, that's all about learning how to live life on purpose. One of the best ways to get energized. So when you're connected to that thing that leaves you wanting to leap out of bed, and you can't wait to be in service of that, then that's just naturally an energizer and leaving you full of vitality and aliveness. Okay. So today, as much as I'd love to give you all those tools that we cover in those 9 full days of workshopping, what I'm inspired to give you today is one of the tools that we use across all of those different workshops. So it's the thing that lies like really at the bottom, and it's probably one of the most powerful coaching tools that I have in my coaching toolbox. Okay, are you ready for that? Does that sound like something that would be valuable? Okay, so we're listening from the perspective of how can we use this tool in order to support ourselves to connect more and more to that beautiful energy and vitality that is there. It's just waiting for you to tap into it. So the basic principle, if we look at, if we had to identify what does energy and vitality feel like, what's occurring when we've got into that sweet spot. So the way I can explain it is it's when I'm in flow. So when you feel like you are in sync with whatever is occurring in your life, we can call it like being in the zone. You know those moments when you just like find yourself tumbling into the zone and you are more creative, you're more collaborative, you are more effective, more productive than you think possible. And you come to the end of it, because sadly it does end at some point, and you think like, wow, look what I did. And then we sit in like the hoping and guessing when is that going to land again. So the tool I'm giving you has in its power the ability for you to step into that place of flow, to create the zone whenever you want to. So you then become the master of it, as opposed to you sitting there like hoping today's the day I'm going to get swept up. Okay, so that's where we're going. So a little bit of sort of understanding of how we designed as human beings is as we go through our experience of life, and I'm going to draw a little bit. And before I start drawing, I have to excuse my terrible artistic abilities, but hopefully you'll get the message. Okay. As we're walking through our journey of life, we constantly have a set of circumstances. So life and stuff is constantly happening around us. And we create an automatic reaction to those set of circumstances. So we immediately react. Now what modern neuroscience is showing us is that we thought we were thinking people, that we thought and then we felt. Well, neuroscience is actually taking us back to what sort of many ancient texts knew, is that we feel first, and then we think, we interpret the emotional reactions that we have to life. You know that around your heart and in your heart muscles, there's a neural network that looks identical to the neural network in your brain. It's just a lot smaller and not nearly as dense. What I find most fascinating is the main connection between the heart brain and the head brain is the vagus nerve. And there is significantly more information that is passed from the heart to the head than from the head to the heart. So there's like scientific proof that we're feeling, we're responding emotionally, and only then does the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex, then engage and start to make sense of that. But let's take a step back into automatic reactions. I like to, it's not necessarily a scientific term, the term I like to use is that as human beings, we have the ability to create automatisms. Let me explain how this happens. So whenever we respond to stimuli, to circumstances happening in our life, what happens is it creates like a lightning flash, electrical current between the different axons of the brain. Now, whenever a particular stimulus is repeated, so there's the same pattern repeated multiple times, there's a mechanism in our mind that says that pattern is necessary for survival. It then starts a process called myelination, where it starts to put a layer of a fatty deposit around those electrical currents. So it then becomes a permanent pathway. So it might not be activated, but when it is activated, can you see it's like a nice strong connection. And the more we use that particular flash, the stronger it becomes. Now, what I find fascinating is that most of our emotional reactions to life, so our emotional reactions to the circumstances, the things that happen around us, are created between the ages of 2 and 7. Not exclusively, but mostly. So that often explains why when we have a reaction, we have an emotional outburst to something, it seems childish. Well, hey, it probably is, because it was created when you were actually a child. And then we go into the double whammy of we start judging ourselves, we start punishing ourselves, we start having like very strong conversations, is that I should know better because I am an adult. Okay, so we fight against those reactions and feel bad for having those reactions. Does that sound right? I saw some like sort of nods going around the room. Okay, so now these automatisms are very useful. It's the exact same process that taught me how to walk. Yeah? It's the exact same process that taught me how to drive a car. So as I'm standing here, I'm not necessarily thinking about car driving. However, as soon as I sit behind the wheel of my car, situation, the program gets loaded, car driving. Then I can drive now with pretty much not thinking about what I'm doing. And I'm very aware of this process at the moment, and my daughter's 17 and stepping into the driver's seat. And it's been really amusing to look and like understand that process of automatism in developing an automatic skill. Because for now, she's like really, and I remember when I was there, you're like sort of having to think about so many things, and like this goes there and this goes where? At the same time, and you think, will I ever get it together? But with practice, what happens? Now suddenly, I can do it without giving it a second thought. Okay. And so that's useful because it's the way we learn to do things, but also it's sometimes not so useful is when we are having inappropriate reactions to the circumstances in our life. And can you see how those things, being in reaction to the circumstances of our life, is one of the key things that drains our energy? Because we get caught in that reaction, then we get caught in the consequences of that action, then we get caught in the judgment, the guilt, the beating up, and all of that kind of stuff. And we get to the end of the day, and we wonder why we're exhausted. And all we've done is manage this stuff. Never mind actually done what you set out to do in the day. So, give me some examples, because we're going to start working with this and make it a little bit practical, give me some examples of your automatic reactions. So in response to life. And it doesn't have to be all bad. It can for example, one of mine is being enthusiastic. Please excuse my spelling. What are some of yours? So no judgment here, let's just be real. Sorry? Okay, that's a consequence. So that's the action you take based on the reaction. So what is the emotional reaction that causes you to use language? Anger. Okay, beautiful. I think we can all relate to, at times, being triggered into anger. Irritation. Okay. I get that too. There was another hand up there, yes. Okay, so caring. Sam, I see you had your hand up. Defensiveness. Okay, and that could come from fear. Yeah, something along those lines as well. Let's take a couple more. Sorry? Too much energy. Okay. So what would be, so that's the action, so you've got energy, so what would be the emotional behind having too much energy? So would it be like excitement or anxiety? Excitement or anxiety? Anxiety. So it's like that kind of, okay, I got you. Okay, so we could also like sort of judgment, you know, when things don't go the way we want it to go. And we could probably go on all night just filling up this, because we all have a lot of different reactions to the circumstances of our lives. So this is now where we start talking about the transformation. The first step into any form of transformation is awareness. So becoming aware that you are in an automatic reaction and being okay with that. Because as long as you're not aware of it, then you just simply are it and you have no option. So the first thing is to start developing the ability to live your life in stalking mode. So stalking your reactions and what's going on. So you're the ninja. You can like check it out as it's occurring. Yeah? So becoming aware. And being okay. So it now becomes you genuinely curious. Oh, okay. That's curious. That triggered me into anger. Okay. And now the awareness leads you into the second step, which is choice. So now let's say I've been triggered. I'll just, let's just use any one of these. I've been triggered into feeling anxious. So I've got a whole lot of anxiety going on. So now I can simply, because I'm seeing what's going on, I can now ask, is this the most appropriate way to respond to this set of circumstances? If yes, carry on. Yeah? Nothing to do. Just carry on. However, if the answer is no, it's probably going to get me into trouble or get me less of the result that I actually want, then because we have the neocortex, the prefrontal lobe, the new part of the brain, we are able to step into what we would call a self-created So that is where you get to choose what would be appropriate. So give me some examples. So if you find yourself in any one of your reactions, what could you replace that with? So what would be more valuable in that situation? Let's share some ideas. So if I'm anxious, I could be calm. Happy. So if I find myself stressed or unhappy, sad, I could shift that into feeling happy. If I'm finding that I'm feeling negative and in judgment, I could maybe shift to feeling positive. Some more examples. What could you think of creating in place of what you got? Anyone up at the back there? You're going to have to speak in a big booming voice for me to hear, but let's get some contribution from you. Anyone at the back there? Any ideas of what kind of emotion would support you in being effective and productive in those situations where you've been triggered? Content. Okay, so when we're dissatisfied or critical, we could step into a place of feeling content. If I find myself in resistance, fighting against what's occurring in my environment, how many of you use a lot of energy to fight against what we have no control of? Hands up? Yeah? Okay. Me too. A lot. So, sorry? Acceptance. So we could go into acceptance or flow. Or one I love is genuine curiosity. So rather than fight it, I want to look into it and, okay, like what's going on there? What game is at play? Because when I understand the game, I'm then better able to choose my appropriate action to respond to that. I hope that isn't my phone. Here it is. It's my alarm. Oh, I'm monitoring my thyroid. That's actually my take your temperature alarm. Bet you hadn't heard that one before, hey? As an excuse for an alarm to go off. Okay, so can you see we can once again spend a few hours completing this side of the circle. This is fixed predominantly for you. You will have a range of typical automatic reactions. So that's going to happen whether you like it or not. It happens before you can actually think about it. So that's going to happen. On this side is you have infinite amount of options, limited only by your imagination and your creativity. Do you get that? So we can create the most appropriate way to respond to these circumstances. So if I'm here, I'm in anxiety, how effective am I in solving this problem or this challenge? Probably not very. Whereas if I step into a place of calm or confidence or whatever it is that you choose, how much better are you at dealing with that same set of circumstances? So here we're not looking at how do we change the circumstances, we look at how do we change how I'm relating to that set of circumstances. And from here we have resistance, always, and on this side you have flow. Because we automatically feel like we're connected, we're in flow again with the things that are happening around us. We feel empowered again. So, with choice, yes, of course.
Battling between the resistance and flow.
Okay.
Battling with the two concepts of appropriate reaction on the one side and policy on the other side.
Okay. So, if I'm going to answer based on my understanding of your question, but I'm not 100% sure I've understood your question. So what I mean here by resistance is that's when we're in that process of fighting against. Yeah? Distinct from flow is we're working with. It doesn't mean to say we accept the status quo. We just choose a different way in order to create the change. Now, how much more powerful am I if you and I go into resistance like this? Those scientists in the room, what happens? Equal and opposite forces, they negate each other. So, where are we going to go? The only way we can move forward when you and I are like this, in resistance to each other, so in conflict, is for one to be stronger than the other, in whatever form that takes. And look what happens. Winner, loser, always. There's a different way. So from a place of flow is when we're in conflict, I always look at how do I do that. So how can I stand shoulder to shoulder with you and create a greater future for both of us? So we're then in collaboration of creating a better future. Now look what's happening. I'm using my energy and your energy in order to go there. Okay, so then we're connected, we're in flow. We've got a lot more in it. Well, you've got a lot of energy and vitality here, but it's often wasted, yeah, because of that, the dynamics of energy. Did that answer your question?
I think you touched on those as well.
Okay, okay. If we've got time, I'm not quite sure what time my limit is. 7 more minutes. Okay. Yes, of course.
But how do you, I know you can choose, but how do you choose? Because
Okay.
sometimes, let's say you are in a place of defensiveness or anger,
Yeah.
to choose happiness. I mean, how do you do that?
Okay. All right. Okay. So the first step is to become aware that I'm in defense. Okay? And then ask yourself the question, do I choose to stay there, yes or no? Which then opens the choice. If the answer is no, I don't want to, then what do I want to create in place of that? Then, so we haven't finished the story, which might answer your question, is the choice leads to the third step, which is transformation. So what we mean by transformation is transferring the form from here to a different context. So it's not suppressing this, so it's not pretending not to be angry and putting on a smile and being sweet, but meanwhile you want to water them. Okay, but I'm being, that's not it. It's around owning that I'm really angry and I choose to be collaborative. And you actually change the perspective where you're coming from. And you'll feel it's different. So often, when you make the choice, transformation happens automatically. So I'm here, and I immediately find, well, okay, I'm experiencing, and new thought patterns, new actions are available in this context that weren't actually available when you were in defense. Yeah? Sometimes, however, and this is at the beginning of the journey and still those things that highly charge us, is I become aware and I make the choice and I'm still firmly here. I have the wish, I have the intention to be something different, but it hasn't quite happened yet. Or sometimes I find myself a little bit in no man's land. So I'm not quite as much in defense, but I certainly haven't stepped all the way into the space of collaboration or genuine curiosity or whatever it is that you want to create. So that's where we have what we refer to as the 3 transformation tools. The first one is acknowledge. Whoop. The second one is let go. And the third one is decide. So we ask those questions of ourselves. So what can I acknowledge? So what's there to acknowledge? What would I need to let go of? And what decisions could I make in order to be calm, in my example, right now? So you always ask those 3 questions in the context of what you want to create and in the time frame that you want to create it. So in this example, I want to become calm right now. I don't want to wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks for the circumstances to change to trigger me into the automatic reaction calm. Because where's my power? Yeah, and I lose a lot of energy waiting for that moment to arrive. So I'm stepping into being the master of my life. What we mean by acknowledge is it's looking at what are the facts versus what is my story, my interpretation about something. So it's raining outside, that's the fact. My story interpretation could be, oh, it's terrible, it's so dangerous. Yeah? Or wonderful, we need it. Same isness, same reality, different story interpretation. So it's not to say the reality is better than the story, because our mind is that mechanism that will assign meaning. But the power comes in being able to distinguish what is the isness of something and what is my interpretation, my analysis, and being able to create the distinction between the two. I mean, a classic story many years ago, in my early 20s, at the time I was living in Durban, in KwaZulu-Natal, and we'd gone skiing in Austria. And part of the crew was a whole lot of surfer dudes. And we're skiing in Salva in Italy, and it was a really bad year for snow. One morning we come out from breakfast, and they're blue skies, and there are all these surfer dudes. They are in short-sleeve T-shirts with their ski suits like sort of tied around their waists. And I say, like, dudes, like, what are you doing? And they say, no, it's so hot. It was 4 degrees. Now, can you imagine those exact same surfer dudes in the context of a Durban winter that went to 4 degrees? They would be in double hoodies, sitting on the beach saying, grrr, it's so cold. But because the context was different, their experience was completely different. Okay, so looking at what is the story that we look at in terms of the isness. So it's about separating the fact from the fiction. Then it's letting go. Letting go is always the art of letting go a fixed position, letting go an opinion, letting go being right. And typically about letting go being right, that the circumstances should be different, or that that person should have responded in the way that you think they should. Or it can simply be letting go a thought, letting go an emotion that is no longer serving you. Does that make sense? Okay. It makes sense. However, how do you let go? Should we do an experiment? Hey, should we? Okay, it's a simple one, it doesn't hurt. So the first thing is just take your pen, and preferably so it can land on the table. So just hold your pen out and let it go. Okay, how did you do that? You opened your hand. How did you open your hand? Consciously, okay? In your mind. So what happened in your consciousness or your mind that allowed you to let go the pen? You said let go, and what's that process of saying let go? You make a decision. Let's just take a moment to look at that. Nothing is possible until you make the decision to make it so. Yeah? So just the simple decision to listen to my instruction, as crazy it might have been, created a whole network of nerves and muscles to respond to be able to do that. Okay. The good news is letting go a thought, letting go a feeling or an emotion is exactly the same. It's simply deciding to no longer hold on to that thing. Does that make sense? Okay. The difference, though, between my pen and a thought and a feeling is if I want to pick my pen up again, I actually have to make another decision. Hey, I need to decide to go and pick that up. However, most of our thoughts and feelings are habits. They're in that automatic system. So as soon as you let it go, it feels like it's attached to a rubber band. And it just goes sproing, and it's back again. Well, I say, so what? Let it go again. And again. And again. So how many times would you be willing to let something go in order to create the life you want to live? How many times? As many times as it takes, all the time. Now, the beautiful thing about this is as you're letting go, you're doing the exercise of letting something go. Guess what? You're creating new neural pathways. So the more you do it, eventually at some point, that's going to become your automatic reaction. And the old pathway doesn't ever disappear, but it starts to grow a few weeds and some grass. Okay, and then it's like until there's like a big thing that triggers you and then shoops you back into that zone again. So in my journey of working with this a lot, is a lot of the self-created responses that I worked on for years have now become my automatic responses. But it's like going to the gym. If you're an athlete and you want to develop fitness in the body, you need to be exercising it. The mind, the consciousness the brain is exactly the same. You have to take it to the consciousness gym. You're needing to be practicing these things as often as you possibly can in order to develop the fitness to simply be that. Okay. The last one is clear. It's making a decision. And, that decision could be the decision to let something go. It could be the decision to, this is a little bit overwhelming. I'm not able to deal with it, so I'm going to give it a little bit of time. But I'm going to take myself out of the fray. Yeah? Or this has triggered something in me, like a strong emotion, and right now when I'm standing in front of you, it's not the appropriate time to deal with it. So I'll make the decision to deal with it at 5:30 this evening when I'm driving in my car. Okay, so it doesn't all have to be instant. But the power is that the more you practice that, when I make a decision, I notice this coming up, and I decide to do it at a particular time and place, then it leaves me alone for now. And it almost feels miraculous, at 5:30, it's like boing, there it is again. Okay, let's deal with you now. Okay. Good. Am I over time? Now, with those big things that we have to let go, it's like, once again, if I use the gym analogy, is if I decide to go to the gym and I want to pick up 100 kilograms, probably not going to work. Yeah? So what I want to do is I want to set my exercise program that I'm going to go to gym every three days or 3 times a week, and I'm going to start with 20 kilograms until 20 kilograms feels light. Then I'm going to go on to my 40 kilograms, and so I'm going to build my strength until I can easily lift that 100. So when you've got those big things and they're sticky and they it's difficult to let go, start practicing on the smaller bits. Develop the muscle. Okay.
Yeah, that's extremely powerful. And I think I was in 2 minds before I came, because I was so big.
Okay.
At the final moment, I decided I wanted to just go.
Yes.
But it reminds me of a story that if I was the principal of the school, my daughter, or for my children, attended the same school. She suffered from ptosis, a lazy eyelid. And everyone was making fun in the class, which is the principal's daughter. She walked into the office and she said, I can't handle this anymore. My words to her was, let's come down here. And without adversity, you're not going to grow.
Okay.
Love them anyway.
Yes.
She carried that through her high school years. She eventually became the head girl of the school, not by my choice.
Okay.
And then tears were flowing. And the words were, we wanted so much to be like you. She thinks about being in a place of work now. At the age of 23, she's the mentor of grown-ups.
Fantastic, hey? Yeah. That's how powerful it is getting a disempowering reaction, shifting it into an empowering reaction. That's the most important question that you have, is when you find yourself here, is this serving me? If it is, carry on. Even the positive ones, I mentioned one of my favorite ones is to get a heightened sense of enthusiasm, which sometimes isn't appropriate. So when I'm making business decisions and I'm in this like sort of, looking at life through rose-colored glasses and like, so I can only see the possibilities, how good am I at making good decisions? Not really, because I'm only looking at one side. So when I find myself in that position, I say, okay, Michele, because I've made some in that space and they've bitten me, is to say, okay, what do I need to be here? I need to be grounded. Yeah? I need to be solid so I can, yeah. So is this serving me right now? Okay.